Friends, now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, our guest panellist and our Q&A facilitator. Firstly, let me go with our speaker. Peter V'landys, AM, was appointed Chairman of the Australian Rugby League Commission in October 2019, having served on the Commission since February 2018. Peter is also the Chief Executive and Board Member of Racing New South Wales and has held the position of Chief Executive since 2004. Peter commenced his professional career as an accountant. He also worked in the mining and hospitality industries before moving into racing administration in 1988, when he was appointed the Chief Executive Officer of the New South Wales Harness Racing Club. At the time, Peter was the youngest person in Australia to be appointed as Chief Executive of a major metropolitan race club, and under Peter's administration, the Harness Club established a record of innovation within its industry. Peter is also the chairman of the Fairy Godfather Foundation, and we'll find out, Michael, what the Fairy Godfather Foundation is all about, which assists people in Australia. Peter was also made a member of the Order of Australia for services to the racing industry. Please, friends, put your hands together and welcome Peter V'landys to the stage to do the in-depth and deep dive into Peter's mind and heart and soul. Michael Chammas, a senior sports reporter for the Sydney Morning Herald and Nine News, with a focus on local sports in Australia. Michael covers a range of topics including rugby league, football and other sporting major events and sporting events right across the country. Please put your hands together and welcome Michael Chammas to the stage. Michael, the floor is all yours. Peter, thank you very much.
Now, everybody, Michael hasn't done one of these before.
What, an interview?
No, on this stage. So he's a virgin, so we've got to be a bit gentle with him.
Well, let me make it clear, though, everything you say today is on the record, so I'll be using it later on. Look, first of all, I imagine a lot of people in this room, they're here today because they want to know what you're doing with Rosehill Racecourse. A lot of developers, they want to give you some business cards here today. What's going on? Are they a chance? What's going to happen?
Well, we can start an auction if you like. We'll start at 6 billion. If anyone's got 6 billion, we can go from there.
All right, listen, you're well known for what you do in rugby league. Obviously, as mentioned earlier, you've had a long history in racing, but I imagine your proudest moment in your career so far is what you achieved during that COVID period. When everyone else was fearing for their lives, you were pushing ahead and maintaining that rugby league needed to be back on television and needed to be back in this country. Is that your finest achievement in administration?
Oh, look, there's a variety of other things I've done in racing, taking the bookmakers to the High Court of Australia. I felt like the bloke from the castle. I had the vibe, so, and we won that case, and that's brought in billions of dollars to both racing and sport. So that was a big achievement for sport and racing. But COVID was certainly a landmark for me in lifting my profile more than anything else. Hardly anyone knew me up until COVID. And we were the first sport in the world to get started. And we said the 28th of May. We had many hurdles, hundreds of hurdles to get over. Everyone tried to stop us. They called us reckless. We'd cause people to die and everything like that. But we did. We started on the 28th of May. We were the first sport to do so, and those guys south of the border that said that we were reckless and stupid and everything else started 2 weeks later.
Well, you mentioned your profile. But mate, it's done a lot for your ego as well. At Magic Round, everyone's stopping for selfies, taking photos. What's it like now walking down the street and in your shoes at the moment?
Oh, it's certainly different. I can't go to Bunnings now without somebody wanting a selfie. I just want to know where the screws and the bolts are. But look, that goes with the territory. As I said, up until COVID, I used to live a pretty normal standard life, but since COVID, it did get worldwide publicity. It was the major news item pretty well every night. So it substantially lifted my profile.
Yeah. Look, a lot of businessmen and women in the room. Now, I've known you for a few years, and the thing that stands out for me with you is that you value honesty and loyalty probably more than anything. In business, how does that work? Is there a line that you can't cross? These values that you hold close to your heart, how do you use them in everyday work?
Look, the biggest attribute I look in a person is loyalty. You've got to have loyalty. You've got to be part of a team. I remember a chairman that I worked for, Gary Pemberton, said, "That guy's a golfer." And I'm going, what's he mean by that guy's a golfer? what he meant, he's an individual. He's not a team player. You've got to be a team player. So you need to have good people around you that are loyal to you and loyal to your cause. And then if they make mistakes, you look after them. But if they're disloyal, you'll always fail and you'll always get the wrong outcome. So loyalty to me is the number one attribute.
And tell me, how did you get a seat on the table with the Queen?
Well, she
you
asked,
of all people.
I know, a little Greek boy from Wollongong meeting the Queen. So she invited me. She was a massive racing fanatic and she knew of me. She followed racing in Australia and she asked if I could have lunch with her. So when I got there, I thought I'd be on, table 46, but I actually sat next to her. And spoke to her for an hour and a half, and I didn't know at the time, but you're only supposed to speak to the Queen for 15 minutes, and you're supposed to speak to the person next to you, which was actually Camilla. So I never spoke to Camilla. Probably a bad investment now that she's the Queen. But I spoke for an hour and a half with the Queen, and I thought to myself, what do you do with the Queen? Like, what do you say? How do you speak? And I thought, she's just a grandmother. She's like anybody else. So I gave it to her. I basically challenged her.
You gave it to her?
Well, in a roundabout way. We got into a debate, and the more we debated, the more she enjoyed it. The more I challenged her, and the more, we were cracking jokes with each other. She was a really witty lady, and she had a complete faculties. So it was a full-on, robust debate for about an hour and a half.
About what? Like treatment of Prince Harry? What were you talking about?
Well, Harry didn't actually come up. Meghan did, but Harry didn't. Well, I asked her, who's the best ever Prime Minister you worked with? And I said, come on, you don't like Margaret Thatcher, you can tell me, I won't tell anybody else. She said, no, I'll tell you. I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? You should know who the best Prime Minister is. She said, every one of them had different attributes, different skills, so I can't select one. But the story that I just remember vividly that she said to me, I said, how did you get involved in horse racing? She said, my father, King Edward, whoever he was, I thought I was on Sale of the Century for a minute when he was going King Edward and who the third and all that. And he said, it's tradition for kings to own racehorses. And you had to own racehorses. And he hated it. He hated the racehorses. He hated going to the races. And one day when she was about 16, she said, Liz, come with me to the races. She said, I saw this horse, and I saw this beautiful mane. I touched the horse. I never washed my hands for a week, and I was captivated by the horse. And from the age of 16 until she passed away, she was fanatical about horses. Wow. And I asked her, is there any other sport? She said, no, just horse racing. She said, and she organised for me to give a speech at Buckingham Palace. I just thought I'd drop that in.
Yeah, get going.
But we nearly did have an incident though, because I could feel something under the table, and I thought, geez, the Queen's playing footsies with me. What am I going to do here? And I just thought I'd better look. And I looked underneath, and there's 3 freaking corgis underneath being fed by the Queen. So it wasn't. So she used to have the corgis under the table and feed them. So she was quite a lady. And Prince Charles sat next to my wife and spoke to her. Well, now he's the King Charles, to her for an hour and a half. And
was he playing footsies as well? Or?
No, he wasn't playing footsies, but my wife knows all about climate change now. I can tell you that much.
So you meet with the Queen. 2 weeks later, she's gone. Well done. And
no, it was a couple of months later.
Oh, was it?
A couple of months later. It wasn't too quick.
Well, then you end up in the White House with Joe Biden. How did that come about, and what was it like being there in that environment?
Look, that was an invitation from the Prime Minister of Albanese. The Papua New Guinea thing is very important to the Australian government on soft diplomacy, because that's the closest airport, if anyone's going to attack us, is Papua New Guinea. So it's a very valuable partner to have in any crisis. So he invited me over there because it's a big topic in America about the Pacific and how we're going to safeguard the Pacific, and Papua New Guinea was crucial to that. So I got to meet Joe Biden. So when I walked in, Albo, as he is, he made a big song and dance because they introduce you. They go on, First Lady, Mrs. Biden, the President, Mr. Albanese, and then they introduce you. So I've gone in there and I've shook his hand, and then Albo says, "Come on, just come around the corner and get a photo with the 3 of us." Now, I didn't know that you're not supposed to touch the President, so I put my arm around the brown elbow on the President, and I could see all these security CIA agents looking at me, and I said to him, "You're a prop, he's a prop, and I'm a hooker." And he goes, "You're a hooker?" And he let go straight away. I said, "Not that sort of hooker." So, he confused it with Trump, I think, but anyway, that's it.
Oh, dear. Well, you obviously went over there and you leveraged the situation because the plan was to go over to America in the next 6 months and play a game in Las Vegas. And I remember speaking to you about it. when the idea first was floated, and I said, Pete, you're not going to get this off the ground. No one wants this to happen. And you being you, if someone tells you you can't do something, you're going to do it. And you had some knockers saying you can't take a game to America, and we had 40,000 people at the ground, millions watching back in Australia. You must be proud of what you accomplished, but also, what does it mean going forward? Because you always said you were going to take a short-term hit financially for a long-term benefit. Is that still on track?
It's absolutely on track, and we didn't actually take a hit. It cost us as much as what we would normally pay to launch the season, and it's been a phenomenal success because how it came about was when I went to America trying to sell our broadcast, we went to Amazon, we went to Facebook, we went to Twitter, we went to all those companies, and the first question they asked was, what's your population in Australia? And I go, 26 million. They go, there's the door. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, there's 40 million in California. Why would we be interested in such a small market? And they really gave us a revenue share. They gave us nothing. Then I realised there's 336 million people in the United States. Sports betting is booming. They held $26 billion just on one match, the Super Bowl. So there's a market there for Australian sport if we could do it right. So we looked at all these different places, but as soon as someone said Vegas, that was the poker machine lights come in my head. That's the place we've got to go. And we have a product called Watch NRL. Now it's $165 US, and we've hardly sold one in the US. And I know it's a small base, but we've already increased it by 120%. If we can get 1% of the American market taking Watch NRL, that's $700 million a year, which is more than what we get out of broadcast revenue now. And the sports betting could be anything in revenue. So it's got to be over 5 years. And look, we had 14,000 Australians go there last year, which surprised me. We had 1,000 come from England. We had even had some people from Jamaica. Now, I was actually walking through the streets of Las Vegas, and these people from Jamaica were screaming at me, and I thought, geez, they've confused me with someone else. They thought I was Danny DeVito or someone like that. So, but they were actually rugby league fans, and we had people from 26 countries around the world come to Vegas. So next year we're hoping to get 60,000 to the game. We're hoping that we continue to increase Watch NRL. But I have seen Hangover, and Hangover 2 wasn't as good as Hangover 1, so I'm just going to make sure that we do it right again. And look, I really do believe we'll get 30,000 Australians there next year.
Well, I was there. It was an incredible success, and I imagine a lot of rugby league fans in this room, they're wondering, they're ready to buy tickets, Pete. Who's going next year? Who's coming to the ground? Not that I'm interested or writing about it. I'm sure the people here would love to know who's going to America next year.
Actually, when they mentioned the sponsor, I thought they said Phil Gould, and I thought, oh Christ, is he here? It's Phil Gore. So, and you thought the same thing.
I did. I thought Phil was here.
All I can say is that the Bulldogs aren't one of the teams.
The Bulldogs aren't one.
But we can mention two which is the Penrith and the Warriors. They've been confirmed, and we'll probably announce the next two. But we're also looking at two Super League sides to come over, because the English are the biggest travellers there are, and there's an enormous market for Watch NRL in England, where we can certainly grow our revenues there. We'd like to take a women's game there, because I can't believe how good our women's game is. It's just extraordinary, the talent and the ability and the skill that these women have. And it's proven, we had 25,000 people at the Women's State of Origin last week, and we had the biggest audience ever, over 1 million people watching women's rugby league. And no one would have thought of that 3 years ago, how well they're going. Can you see how big it would be in the US watching these women hit each other as hard as they do, and the skill level? I think it'll take the game to another level.
Parramatta fans haven't had much to cheer about. Can you give them something to cheer about? Are they a chance to go to Vegas next year?
Every time we looked at a side to go, Parramatta was one of them. They get thrashed the next week. So they were on the list, but they've suddenly just come off it.
They're off the list? Okay. When you started the NRL, one thing you said was, one thing that struck you was the fact that the game had no assets. I think the last story I saw that the game had, correct me if I'm wrong, which you probably will, $260 million worth of assets. You bought the Gambara Hotel. You bought a couple of other hotels since. Why was that so important to you to invest so heavily and give the NRL a portfolio which they didn't have?
Well, look, what happened was when we stopped the game, and in hindsight we probably shouldn't have stopped the game, but when we did, we had 2 months worth of resources. That's all we had. 2 months worth of paying our bills, and then we were in liquidation. So the 28th of May wasn't just about starting; it was about survival. We had to start, otherwise the game may never have come back. And the reason for that is they had no assets. They used to distribute the whole lot of their revenues. So basically, the only asset they had was a 1982 Mini Minor. That was about it. They had nothing. So I wanted to make sure that the next time we have a crisis, we have assets behind us that we can borrow money, we can do things. So we started doing this as all us good wogs do, build up our assets. So we started buying hotels, and looking for bargains, and we looked at Gambaros, which has turned out to be a really good investment. We bought Kawana Waters up in the Sunshine Coast. We bought the Quest Hotel at Cronulla, and we're looking at a very big one in the next few months. But that will safeguard and future-proof the game for many years, because if there's another, and there will be, you can be guaranteed there will be another crisis. Could be 5 years, 10 years, 15. We'll be ready for it the next time.
You mentioned Papua New Guinea and the importance to the Australian government. Everyone here has heard the stories that you're looking at moving a team or bringing in a team in Papua New Guinea. Now, on the surface, it sounds like madness. Can you explain the financial benefit to the sport and then weighing up a short-term benefit, but also the longevity of the sport? Because people think that it's not going to work, but you're going to send a lot of Australians over to live in Papua New Guinea and Port Moresby. Health issues, safety issues. Why are you so invested in exploring this opportunity with the government?
Well, for a number of reasons. If you look at success stories around the world at different times, and that's how, and you shouldn't be ashamed of copying other successes. One of the things when colonisation came in India was they took cricket there, and cricket became a religion in India. Anywhere you go in India and you talk about cricket, I remember being in England with Mark Ward, and no English person stopped him, but every Indian person stopped him because it's such a religion. Well, it's the same in Papua New Guinea with rugby league. It's a religion. Everybody loves rugby league, and there's 18 million people in Papua New Guinea, so it's a big market for us. It's also will be paid for by the government in having the team there, but it also brings a lot of community benefits, because what happens over there, it's a cycle of poverty. No kid goes to school because the Chinese can give them billions of dollars. Doesn't mean it goes to a handful of people. It doesn't go throughout the community, and it has no benefit. What rugby league will do is actually have kids go to school, because they're attracted to the rugby league player. They're attracted to playing sport, and once they get an education, that breaks that. So we're going to do that in 17 provinces in Papua New Guinea to start with, and as I said, the government's going to pay the whole investment in it. The broadcasters are also very keen because it's a new market, and even if they started at a very low subscription rate, at 18 million people that are fanatical about rugby league, you're going to generate significant new revenues. So we're doing a service for soft diplomacy for Australia, but we're also opening up a market that the people are fanatical about rugby league. So we've done all that research, and I think it'll be a massive success. And in order to get buy-in and engagement by the Papua New Guineans, you've got to have it based there. If you have it based in Cairns, it'll always be known as an Australian team. It's not going to be. So we're going to take the risk and go to Papua New Guinea. And one of the things we've negotiated is that anyone that goes over there will get a tax benefit. So rather than paying 49% tax, you might pay 5% tax. And then what people will do is they'll look at that as a short-term way of making money, because you'll have your own accommodation, you'll have all your meals paid. So everything you earn will be just, put in the savings bank account, and no tax. And that will attract a lot of people, because in racing, I lose all my staff to Hong Kong, because the tax rate in Hong Kong is so low that they go over there for 3 years and they can earn in 3 years what they would earn 10 years in Australia.
So what you're saying is it's not just Rose Hill that people can be excited about. You're going to build a mini city in Port Moresby as well?
Absolutely, and that'll be an asset of the NRL. So that's another asset, and the asset's going to be paid for by the government. So they're giving us the money, and there will be some monies paid to the existing clubs as well. So it's a financial boon for the game, but we're not going to stop there. That's the 18th team. We've got a lot of interest from Perth, and there's a lot of interest from Christchurch at the moment. The Warriors are really going so well in New Zealand that it's outrating the rugby union, which was unheard of in the past.
Yeah. One thing I'm sure people will be interested in is how you manage the stakeholders. And in rugby league, and from what I've seen over the years, and I imagine in racing as well, trying to manage those stakeholders with 17 clubs, your state bodies, player agents, there's so much self-interest. How do you manage that and then also maintain the strong relationships that you have in the game?
Look, it's difficult, because one thing about sport is that the tribalism makes you make poor decisions. So you might have the best business people on earth on a sporting board, but they leave their brains at the door because they're tribal, it's their hobby, they don't apply the same business principles as they do. Some of the calls I get about the refereeing, etc., from some of the high prominent business people, they make no sense. Like it's you can see the tribalism. So it is hard, but you learn to negotiate with them and appease them when you need to, and you pick your battles. You don't battle with all of them. But look, overall, I think because the game is going so well at the moment, it's a pretty pretty calm situation.
There was discussions about the Sydney Swans earlier. You made a comment to me about it. When you say pick your battles, you've thrown a lot of grenades south of the border. How much of that is deliberate? How much of that is part of the actual gamesmanship with the Victorian government, with the Victorian racing? Is a lot of it deliberate, tactical, some of the things that you say in the media?
Oh, absolutely. And most of it I'm joking, but they got no sense of humour. They take it quite seriously. And they bite. And so, which is weird because during COVID, I was the most hated man in Victoria because I was going to start on the 28th of May and they were going to start on the 1st of September, and how dare that little wog bloke from Wollongong is going to do this, us mighty Victorians, we should be doing it first, and what's he doing? And so they do bite, and they're very, very sensitive for people that think they're superior than us.
So you, Dan Andrews, the two people most wanted in Victoria then?
Oh, I think I'm more wanted than Dan Andrews in Victoria. Actually, he rang me in the middle of the COVID situation, wanting to make sure that they could start the AFL at the same time. So he became aware of us pretty quickly too.
Got some questions for you. Mr. Joseph Risk, the CEO of Arabank, has asked me to ask you a couple of questions. He said, you are a well-known leader, but what degree is teamwork important in your day-to-day challenges?
Look, teamwork is everything. You're only as good as the team you have around you, and a good CEO needs two attributes in my view. One, you need a great team, and you need to be able to pick your team. Like I remember when I was a kid, I'd always be the last person picked when we're all standing at the back of the fence. But you've got to have a good team. You can't do everything yourself, and you've got to learn to delegate, and you've got to be able to trust that delegation. But the most important thing in my view for a CEO is relationships. You've got to have relationships. And that takes a long time to build up. So I have a room at Randwick where I invite all the media, I invite all the politicians, and I'll give you an example. I've got to know every editor, every major media player, and I've never used them. So I have them there, I can always pick up the phone, but you never ever ring them on a minor stupid thing. If someone said something bad about you, you save it for the big times. And when COVID hit, that was a big time for me because everyone was attacking us. And I remember a certain minister, which I won't mention his name, I get a call from the chairman of the Broncos, and he says, Peter, you aren't starting on the 28th of May. I said, why is that? He said, this minister has told me that he's going to stop you from moving interstate, he's going to stop the Warriors from coming to Australia, your history. So you might as well just pack it up and make an excuse why you can't do it. I said, well, can I ring him? He said, yeah, ring him. He said, but he won't change his mind. So I rang him and I said, look, it's employment, it's mental health. And he says, well, look, wait a minute. He said, I've stopped people coming here because of, for funerals. I've stopped people getting cancer treatment, and I'm going to allow a rugby league team in here. You're kidding, aren't you? And I said, look, can you give it the 24-hour test? He said, what do you mean 24-hour test? I said, sometimes you might make the wrong decision in the first bit, so can you just give me 24 hours? He said, okay, you can have 24 hours. So I got every editor, every major newspaper, every major news channel, everyone ring this minister. So when I rang him the next day, he says, we possibly can do this now. And sure enough, Tamworth became an international airport and the Warriors came in. So, and that's all relationships. You use the relationships when you need them the most. And without them, you're not a successful CEO. And I think it's a load of rubbish when people say a CEO has 5 years. You only become good at 5 years when you get those relationships going.
This 24-hour test you speak, I think you live by this because I remember you sprayed me once and you rang me the next day saying, sorry, I didn't give it the 24-hour test. Has this been a thing for you for a while?
Oh, yeah, always. And sometimes I wish I could give it the 24-hour test because it does work. If you just let it go and you're calm, you're cool, and because decisions change overnight, and you get better decisions by not being, impatient, which I am. That's one of my weaknesses. I'm an impatient bugger. But if you give it 24 hours, you get better outcomes, no doubt.
One more question from Mr. Risk. What vision do you have for improved levels of major and international events for Sydney and New South Wales as a whole? And we're probably not going to like this. Can we compete and push past Melbourne, for example?
Well, look, I've been a big critic of Sydney. We've got the most beautiful city in the world, and every time you go overseas and you come back, you realise how beautiful Sydney is. But with a beautiful sister, and we take it for granted. We don't have any events. If you don't have the NRL Grand Final, the Everest in racing, what do we have? We don't have anything. And Victoria, to give them due credit, they take all the major events. They've got the tennis, they've got the F1, they've got all the major events. We don't seem to compete to get these major events, and we need to. And I'm pleased to see that the Allianz Stadium now is bringing in these big major artists, because it has an enormous economic benefit for everybody in Sydney.
Might, with your blessing, open it to the floor for a couple of questions. Anyone would like to ask Peter any questions, any rugby league questions, any business questions?
Or racing.
Racing. There we go. We've got one over there.
Welcome, Pete.
Thank you.
Mark Johnston from Lightning Broadband. When I have a look through Wikipedia, I don't see a whole lot about your stuff before racing. Where did you get your start?
Look, one of the reasons I think a lot of people can associate with me in this room is because I remind them of themselves. I came out when I was a 4-year-old on a boat from Greece. I was born in Kythera, a little island in the middle of the Mediterranean, and my parents weren't very wealthy. My dad used to work at the steelworks, and when you went to school, you were known as the WOG. It was a really strange time, and I don't think the Aussie kids realised how much it hurt when you were called a WOG. And I used to get bashed up in the playground. I used to think to myself, how I don't want to go to school. I just can't, this bullying and this getting bashed up. So I thought to myself, how the hell am I going to survive all this bullying? And to be fair to the Aussie kids, they were just as intimidated, us wogs as what we were. And I thought I had to assimilate by playing sport. And I played rugby league. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because it gave me the start to allow me to assimilate and be with those Aussie kids, and that's very, very important. And I'm sure now other generations of Asians and Indians, etc., are probably going through the same thing I went through as a 4-year-old. So I went through the public school system. The closest I got to a private school was walking past it. I never went to any of the private schools. I went to an all-boys school, so when I went to uni it was quite frightening sitting next to a girl. And then I did an accounting degree and became an accountant. From there I went to a mining company. I was in the mining industry. I did some work in an international hotel. And then one day, because I was really interested in harness racing of all things, because my grandparents died very young, and I used to go across the road from my best friend's house, and there used to be a guy there, and I sort of adopted him as a grandfather and he owned harness horses. So I got captivated by all his stories. So when I saw that the harness racing job was up, I thought, I was only 25 at the time, 26. I thought I had Buckley's chance of getting it, but it would be a good experience if I got an interview. But sure enough, I got the job, and I started in harness racing. From there I went to Racing New South Wales. It then became the chairman of the NRL. So realistically, I've been in sport pretty well all my career, other than early in my time.
Thanks for that. Great question. Anyone else? Back corner over there. Oh, someone here. There we go.
Peter, lovely to hear you speak. Shane Gahar, sport is a microcosm of life. You as a hooker in rugby league, what was that a microcosm for?
Actually, I played lock forward, but I was only a hooker during Biden and Albo, as they were the two props. So I haven't really been a hooker. I played second row lock. So look, sport is everything, because what sport teaches you is teamwork. You're a member of a team. You assimilate with people. They become lifelong contacts. And sport is realistically like life, because you learn things, but the most important thing I learned from that is teamwork, and how you can use sport to make friends and to make acquaintances for the future.
Oh, 2 more questions. One more at the back here.
Yeah. Welcome and thanks so much, Peter. Just a quick question. As a sports lover, when we were young, and you talk about young WOG kids growing up, everyone got thrown into soccer. And I don't understand how, and I'm a rugby league, I love all sports, and my kids play both. My oldest son plays rugby league, my second one plays soccer, NPL. Why I could see why, but why hasn't soccer grown so much as the NRL has here? Is one question. The second part of that is, would you ever consider maybe taking over management of A-League? Because I feel that's what they're suffering. I don't think they've got the management right, and that's why obviously A-League doesn't seem to have the reputation that the NRL has. Have you ever considered maybe working with them or taking over and get them on their feet? Because I feel like they're struggling, even more. And not to take away from rugby league, but I feel like those two codes should be the number one codes of Australia. Thoughts?
Look, that's a very, very good question, and I can explain it this way. In participation, soccer thrashes all of us. It's the most played game in Australia, but they don't seem to go on after from the juniors on upwards unless you're an elite player. And what I put that down to, in my view, is that you have an elite competition in England, Premier, so why are you going to watch a A-League here in Australia, which is not the Premier League, when you've got the premium product in England? And that's, I think, the biggest drawback soccer's got. If that wasn't there, Premier League wasn't there, there would be a lot more popularity with the A-League here because it would be what they would watch. My son is a perfect example. He plays soccer at school, and etc. And he plays this game on his Xbox, FIFA. And he can tell you every flag, everything in England, and he just decided to follow Aston Villa, and he'd know soccer backwards in every Premier League side in England. You ask him an A-League team here in Australia, he wouldn't know one. And so it's very good marketing by the Premier League and how they've got FIFA and how they've gaminised the sport. But I think it's because you've got the premium product somewhere else, and that's why NRL is fortunate to be able, because we've got the premium product here in Australia, in rugby league around the world, so we should be able to pick up a lot of people from England because it's very popular in England, but it's not the premier one. The NRL is the premier one. So I think somehow the A-League has got to develop itself into becoming a premier sport. It's got to take risks and bring some of the, like it used to in the past, bring some of the star players out here. A perfect example, I think, is what's happening in America with soccer. You've got Messi that's over there, and he's rejuvenated the whole soccer scene in the United States. You had Beckham go over there. That's what they've got to do here, is find some players that at the end of their career that is going to attract people to the sport, and they've got to work out a system where they can get the players who are in the junior participation go to that next level. And look, I don't think it's impossible. I think it can be done, but it'll be a long-term strategy for them to do it, though.
We're going to pay for that.
Sorry?
We're going to pay for that.
Yeah, well, there's obviously the question was who's going to pay for them in regards to
look, sometimes you've got to spend money to make money. That's what you've got to do, and you've got to, and again, you've got to make the sport entertaining. You've got to see, people have only got so much disposable income to spend on entertainment, and we're all in the entertainment business. Rugby league is in the entertainment business, so that's why we made all the changes we did with 6 to make it a faster game, because people want to be entertained. It's their escapism. They watch that game to forget all the problems in life and blame the referee for everything in the world's problems, including the ozone layer. It was the referee's fault. The potholes in Pitt Street, the bunker, blow it up. But it makes you escape, and it gives you, when you go to work the next day, the bloody state of origin, the Blues are going to beat those Maroons, etc. And that's what sport does.
Yeah. Very true, very true. Last question here down the front, Pete.
Hi, Peter. Work. Darren Reid from NG Locals. First and foremost, I've got 2 questions, if I can. Who do you support in the NRL? Who's your team? And is there an opportunity you can also, similar to the question the gentleman asked at the back, if you can help the rugby union out? We're struggling.
My name's Peter Volandes, not Jesus Christ. So I don't think even Jesus Christ can help rugby union. But anyway, that's what was the first question? Look, I've always been a St George supporter all my life. With being a Greek immigrant kid, you just sort of become a St George supporter. That's all the Greeks are all St George supporters, and some are naturally the Bulldog supporters. But so we've been pretty lean in the last few years. I've even tried to get them a salary cap increase. That doesn't help either. So.
It's true about rugby union. I asked you that before. Would the NRL consider trying to help out rugby union, buying the rugby union? And you said to me, I still remember it, We only buy assets,
That's
not
right.
liabilities.
Yeah, that's exactly right. As we said, we buy assets. We don't want any liabilities. We've got enough of those.
Well said, Peter. I'm sure everyone appreciated your time. Thanks for sharing your journey with me, and when I ring you later, make sure that's all on the record as well. So, on behalf of everyone, thank you very much.
Peter and Michael, can you just wait there for a moment? Salim's got a small gift to give you both. Wasn't that fantastic? You are both brilliant. I mean, we need to have a repeat performance. They were just fantastic. Very funny, very informative. And Salim, you've got the gifts. I'm not sure where the whiskey... here it comes. Peter and Michael, you're going to receive a bottle from Cullington Mill Distillery, Oatlands in Tasmania. It's won 77 awards. This whiskey has been matured at 1,100 metres in altitude, and the winner of the best label and gold medal for single malt in recent awards. So it's a fantastic...
We've got a new hooker.
Okay, a new hooker.
There's no CIA agents today anyway.
Isn't that fantastic? Friends, how could you beat that? I mean, Peter is passionate, determined, committed, hard-working, one of a kind. I think when God made him, he broke the mould, and even though it was made in Greece, he's done a fantastic job at the helm of Racing New South Wales, but also at the helm with Andrew Abdo at the NRL. And it's great that they do such a great job and provide us with the sports that Sydney, New South Wales and Australia thoroughly deserve. So please put your hands together again and thank Peter V'landys. And Michael, Chammas, thank you very much, Michael, for your in-depth facilitation of the Q&A with Peter. It was brilliant, and thank you very much for your beautiful work that you do. And Salim, thank you for the beautiful gifts that you have bestowed upon both Peter and on Michael. It now gives me great pleasure to call on Mike Doyle, the CEO of Eurolix, to give the vote of thanks. Please put your hands together and welcome Mike Doyle.